So I'm building a program, I think, on a solid foundation and a culture of trust with anyone that survives. Now it becomes survival ed because I set a much different tone and an energy
Mhm.
and and a
Mhm.
work rate. So I don't, not everyone's going to survive, but the people that do.
What's going on? Welcome back to Iconic Influence, the world's first adventure based leadership podcast that teaches you how to build better teams and attract top talent using a simple 3-part strategy. I'm your host, Adam F. Jones. I'm a former Army commander and Black Hawk helicopter pilot and the founder of Kingdom Operatives, a tactical training company that equips high stakes leaders to build mission effective teams. If this is your first time with us, welcome. We're going to have a lot of fun. And we're going to give you some information that can unlock restricted training that only you and other people like you who do the work will have access to. We call this our KO code word. Listen closely to today's episode and make sure you don't miss it so that you can have access to limited training that many people will never be able to see. This is episode 4. Let's get after it. Okay, so in just a minute, we're going to uncover a teaching from Dan Hurley. He's the coach of the University of Connecticut basketball team. He's actually being interviewed by Ed Mylett right here. As a former Army commander, when I was about to step into that role, I began to see that, look, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to command a unit. I've never done that before. And in fact, there's someone else who's already done it. So how do I prepare myself for something I've never done before? And today we're going to talk about that. And here's why. Right now, we live in a time where people are being repositioned. What I like to say is that people are being positioned for purpose and new purposes. That God is moving his people around to the next location that they're supposed to be in to be able to provide solutions and give transformation to new people. That being said, that can be kind of overwhelming, and I get that. You currently might find yourself getting ready for that next position. Maybe to be the CEO of a company. Maybe it's to move into a brand new role in an area that you normally haven't operated in. Maybe you know someone personally who you are equipping to take on new levels of responsibility. Either way, it's very clear we live in a time when everything is changing once again. And I can't help but remember when I stepped into this unit of 90 plus people that there was a principle that I needed to not only learn, but I needed to apply it. And we call that principle know your AO, your area of operations. Knowing your area of operations is so key because we have to know who's in there, what systems are in place, what processes are in place. Is there people we should be removing from our organization? And honestly, most leaders, they don't take the time to know their AO, especially when they're stepping into a new role. And there's some key mistakes they make as well, and I'm going to share those with you in just a minute. As I studied Dan Hurley, the coach of the University of Connecticut basketball team, I realized that's exactly what he's done. When he steps into these roles of all these different teams he's taken over and helped rebuild, he knows his AO. If you're ready to go, let's study Dan Hurley for a moment. I'm going to bring you right back in, and we're going to talk about the 4 critical mistakes that most managers and leaders make when they're taking over a new team.
Obviously your press conference, man, when you get the stage and you get introduced to the fan base and to the university organization for the first time, you've got to do a great job with that. I mean, you've got to get people excited. You've got to, establish a vision and an identity of who you're going to be and, generate that enthusiasm because you're taking over for a coach and a program that has bottomed out. The one thing that I've done when I've gone into these places that I think is important in terms of your people is I don't go in there and get rid of any of the staff or move on from any of the players. I give ample amount of time for people to show value or show a commitment to changing habits, behavior. So I really evaluate things and not come in a transactional way and try to show people that I'm more transformational and that I want to work with people. So I'm building a program, I think, on a solid foundation and a culture of trust with anyone that survives. Now it becomes survival ed because I set a much different tone and an energy and and a
Mhm.
work rate. So I don't, not everyone's going to survive, but the people that do, they know what I'm all about. And then, hire the best staff you could hire and make sure you get that blue chip talent that's about the right things. But,
Mhm.
really when you get in there, man, I think it's just like establish a work rate and a trust and a work ethic that's going to kind of blow people away, and then obviously go get some talented people.
Okay, well, whether you are the one who's preparing for a new position, you're preparing someone else for a new position, or you have a friend or a family member who's about to make a big change, I think it's obvious what Dan Hurley talked about is really critical in this moment of our life. Now, at Kingdom Operatives, we always want to make sure that what we're teaching you, we package into a clear principle and strategy that you can use. That 3-part strategy that I talk about is called the Blue Sky Strategy. 3 different areas of expertise, which we call the specializations, come together to make a leader who can build mission-effective teams. Those 3 specializations are 1, command presence, 2, situational awareness, and 3, mission readiness. If you were in the military, you recognize all those terms because I'm not making this up. But if you haven't heard those before, let's talk about them just for a moment. Command presence is about becoming a leader that attracts other people to you, a leader that people want to follow. Second, situational awareness is all about being a leader that sees more and before others see. And third, mission readiness is all about being a leader that can prepare your people for the path ahead. You probably see all 3 specializations playing into the way Dan Hurley approached this situation. But I want to point out one today, and that's our second specialization called situational awareness. All about you becoming a leader that sees more and before others see. Imagine what it would be like to have a team that they see you and they respect you, and you're significant in their life because you're the person who's looking out for them. You can see further down the line. You can see the ambush that's set up if you only go a little bit further. You can see that some of the clients are not going to renew in this next year. You can see that reporting must improve, and you're telling them all of this because you care about them. What would it be like to be that leader? To be that effective leader that sees more and before others see? Well, right here from Dan Hurley, we get some really critical insights. And I hope you got your notebook out because I'm going to cover with you the 4 critical mistakes that most leaders make when they're stepping into a new position. The first mistake that most leaders make is that they change things too fast. I can think of many instances where I would see a new manager or leader show up after only a couple days of observing and getting brought up to speed on where things are saved and what processes are in place, only to quickly start making decisions without knowing their area of operations. If you listen to what Coach Dan Hurley talks about, he said when he goes into this, he brings some things, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment, some of the things he brings into the situation, but also he observes. He sees what's already set up. Where are the gaps that we can work on? So for yourself as a leader, I really want you to just take some time when you step into this new role just to observe. That's it. How are you going to know your area of operations if you don't observe your area of operations? There's many ways that you can observe your area of operations. I'm going to give you just a couple to get you started. 1, maybe there's a true map. In the military, we get a map of our area of operations. Maybe you have a map. Maybe you have some policies you can review right now. Maybe there are some documents in place. Maybe there's some training available. What can you do to start to learn your area of operations? Is there a tool that's needed? I think of a group that I've worked with where we've needed smart sheets. Well, probably should go learn smart sheets if I know it's going to be needed. Might as well take some time before I step into that role to at least have a base understanding instead of saying, hey, why do we do things that way? Let's change it. No. Don't make the first mistake. Additionally, are there people that you should be talking to know your area of operations? Are there relationships that you can start to develop? Is there equipment that you need to be aware of? Military, we're showing up. There's going to be new equipment when we get to our units. Some units have more vehicles, some have aircraft, some have different types of weapons and people. What specializations are there? These are really basic things that if you just set your intention, they're going to get you lasting results. But I want you to know, why does this matter so much as we move into our second point? It's because that first impression ends up becoming a lasting impression. It takes a long time to begin to remove some things from the original image that you gave someone of who you are and how you operate. I learned this from a first sergeant in the Army, and it was really helpful. And he said, Adam, you can always start strong and go softer, but you can't go the other way. If you start soft with your people, then to go stronger, to be more serious, to be more firm, you're actually going to throw off the image that they have of you. If you start strong, you can ease it up real quick, but they'll still have that. And I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about being some authoritative dictator who's trying to get your way. I'm just saying be careful of that first impression. I'm the kind of guy, I show up smiling. I'm happy to be there. I love people. I want to connect with them. And that's still very intentional because I know that's the first thing that they'll remember is that, man, Adam actually cares about people. He cares about the team. I'm going to give you a quick tip. Instead of just leading the team, why not be on the team? Show them, I don't just lead this team, I'm on this team with you. We build trust in the trenches. So go get in the trenches with them and observe. All right, so the second mistake that most leaders make when they step into a new role, they get rid of the problem children. I'm going to put that in air quotes if you're on here with me on YouTube, the problem children. Every organization has those 20% of people who barely do any work at all, who complain the most, who are not engaged, who maybe already have a little bit of a bad reputation. It's just the way it works. Instead of getting rid of the 20% at the bottom level, a great leader steps in and says, man, is it possible that a culture made them this way? Is it possible that another leader allowed them to drift? I've talked about this in previous episodes in Iconic Influence where we talk about the drift. In episode 3 in particular, where we study Layla Hormozi, we talk about the drift and how people don't know they're drifting. We have to call it out. We have to call it out and we have to acknowledge that drift. And I think about that today with so many leaders out there. They've let the standards slip. And unfortunately, their people have adjusted to that. And now you come in and you're just going to get rid of everyone? I don't think so. Maybe we give them another chance to respond to a new leader. That's what a great leader does. That's what a mission effective team looks like. Dan Hurley does not come in and start chopping heads of why a team is losing and get rid of all the coaches and players. Instead, he gives them an opportunity to rise up to his new standard. He sets a standard and he sees who will rise to meet it. All right, now we're going to get into our third in just a moment. But look, if you're here and this is your first time here, I'm just so glad you are here. And I want to continue to help you. I want to continue to help you build better teams. So take a moment and subscribe to this podcast. And if you've been listening and you're like, man, I think this could really help a friend of mine, would you please share it with them? Because that helps us reach more people. I'm not doing this for me. I don't make money from a podcast. This isn't monetized. I'm doing this because I want to release what I've received from my experience in the military. A lot of people don't get to do what I did. They don't get to fly helicopters. They don't get to be a commander. And they don't get to see how leaders on that level operate. But I can help you. And that's why I'm doing this. If you can do that, we'll spread our reach and we'll be able to help more people. Thanks. The third critical mistake that most leaders make when they're stepping into a new role is that they try to match the energy of the team. Here's what I'm saying. Maybe you're in the corporate culture. Maybe you're seeing a lot of things that are stale and it's killing you. Or maybe you're about to go into that culture. I don't know your situation, but I know this is a critical mistake. You begin to change your energy to match theirs instead of using your energy to raise theirs. The chances are, if you're going into a new role, you got to be somewhat excited about it. You got to be hopeful for it. So if you're coming into an organization where maybe it's, a little bit down and out, pull them up with you. See, leaders, we don't push people. We pull them through our own example. We must model before we measure. So Coach Hurley, again, using the principle of knowing his area of operations, he brought in his energy. He brought in his standard. He was saying, I don't know who's going to be able to hang with me, man, but this is what it's going to be like. We're going to work hard. He spent time as he started to learn his area of operations to actually work on recruiting, work on promotion, get people hyped up, let them know this is a new team, this is a new year. His energy raised everyone else's. So do not match your energy to theirs. Instead, bring them up with you. And the fourth critical mistake that most leaders make when they're stepping into a new position is that they do not have a vision. You're expecting another organization to give you that vision. You're expecting your higher leaders to give you that vision. Look, you got to have a vision. And that vision should be strategically aligned to the big picture of the company you're in or to the other clients that you're going to work with. They need your vision. So come in with a crystal clear picture of what things are going to look like. To bring it all together, when I was stepping into Delta Company Command, which is aircraft maintenance company, okay, the organization had lower morale. Retention was absolutely low. Engagement was low. It was not a place people really wanted to be. And I remember thinking, man, people need to see something in order to actually move towards something. They need to see it in order to move towards it. And I thought of two examples that could help them. So I came in and I said, here's what we need to do. First thing, and by the way, I don't know if you're catching this. I didn't come in right away and say this. This is about 15 days to a month in to say, hey, now that I've observed everything, now that I can see the gaps, because I'm the one who's new to the organization, here's what I'm seeing. And here's what we're going to focus on. And I said we're going to focus on two things. The first thing is we're going to focus on failing forward. The organization was highly risk adverse. A couple people were doing most of the work. Let's fail forward. Let's make mistakes. Let's put people in a position to where they fail, and we're going to back them up and award them for their failure. I know that might sound insane, but that's how I approached it, because just a couple people were doing most of the work because they didn't want to mess up, and we didn't want to slow down. And I started to communicate with my other leaders, my adjacent leaders, and my supervisor. And I said, hey, just so you know, I'm going to start working with them on some things. We're going to work on some fundamentals. We're going to get people more experience. And we're going to start probably slowing down a little bit. And if you need me to speed up, just let me know. I'll work on that for that specific mission. But overall, I need to get these people equipped to be able to handle more work. So that was one of the things I needed them to see. I needed to see that, man, it's okay to fail here. And I need you to in order to get better. And then we put some checks and balances in place so that, there wasn't aircraft that weren't properly maintained and they're going to crash or anything like that. We're not talking about that. You can still allow someone to fail and put a buffer before that final awareness of their failure, right? Of a catastrophic event. You can put a buffer. You can put someone to mitigate risk. This is how leaders think. Second thing I did is I said, man, they need a Spartan mentality. And I remember I looked at my organization and I said, guys, who here is familiar with the Spartans? And I'm talking about 90 people at this time, okay? And they're all circled around me and people put their hands up. And I said, all right, what's like one of the most important sayings that the Spartans had? And someone jumped up and he said, you either come home with your shield or on it, sir. And I saw people, they got pretty jacked up about that. They were excited. And I said, all right, cool. That's how we're going to be. We are going to be the organization that looks out for one another. Our shield to protect one another is more important than our sword to fight. I need us to be an organization that takes care of one another. We are not opposing forces. We are on the same team. And knowing that, let's embrace a Spartan mentality. Now, I wish I said it as beautiful as I just said it right now, but man, I've grown since then. But the principle still applies. And I want you to know your people need to see it. So give them a vision to run to. All right, so there you have it. Those are the 4 mistakes that most leaders and managers make when they're stepping into a new position. The first one was that they change things too fast. The second mistake is that they get rid of the problem children too quickly. The third critical mistake is that they try to match the energy of that team instead of setting their own intention, their own energy, and pulling them up with them. And the fourth mistake, they don't have a vision and they don't make it clear and plain. If you can use this and avoid the 4 critical mistakes, that most leaders make when they step into a new position, and use the teaching from Dan Hurley here, and in particular, our principle of knowing your area of operations, expanding your awareness to see what's really going on. Where am I going into next? Where am I about to step into? Who's there? What resources are in place? What processes are in place? What systems are there? Who are my key points of contact? All these type of things are critical. If you can start to do that, then your next impression will be a lasting impression because it will be the right impression. Man, you got this. You can do this. And if you listen this long, it's time that you get our secret letter of the KO code word. And that is the letter A, alpha. Remember letter A, and if you don't have the other letters, go back, because when this is all said and done in just a couple more episodes, you will have a KO code word that will unlock restricted access training only for people like you who do the work. And I just cannot wait to share it with you. One final thing before you go. Whether you are at the top of a peak, experiencing all the success in the world, or the bottom of a pit, experiencing failure, depression, anxiety, feeling like there's no way of getting out, please continue mission.